The words still echo in my mind today, sharp as broken glass cutting through 23 years of fatherhood. I hate having you as a father. You've ruined everything. My daughter, Elena, screamed those words at me 6 months ago, her face twisted with rage as she stood in my driveway, pointing an accusing finger at the man who had changed her diapers, taught her to ride a bike, and walked her down the aisle just 2 years earlier. But when her perfect husband, Marcus, abandoned her last week, leaving her with nothing but debt and a broken heart, she called me sobbing at 3 in the morning. The same daughter who swore she never wanted to see me again was now begging for the one thing she had thrown away, her father's love. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning everything fell apart started like any other Tuesday in my small auto repair shop in Millfield. I was underneath a rusted Ford pickup wrestling with a stubborn transmission when my phone buzzed against the concrete floor. The oil-stained screen showed Elena's number, which surprised me since we hadn't spoken in 2 weeks. Our relationship had been strained ever since her wedding, when I'd made what she called the biggest mistake of my life. "Dad, you need to come to the house right now." Her voice carried that particular tone she'd inherited from her mother, sharp with authority and barely contained fury. "We need to talk about what you did to Marcus." I slid out from under the truck, wiping my hands on a rag that had seen better days. My back ached from 47 years of crawling under vehicles, fixing other people's problems while my own family seemed to fall apart piece by piece. "Elena, I'm in the middle of work. Can't this wait until—" "No, it can't wait." The phone line crackled with her anger. "Marcus told me everything about your little conversation at the wedding, about how you tried to poison him against me, about your pathetic jealousy because I married someone successful instead of ending up like you." The accusation hit me harder than any wrench to the gut. 6 months earlier, during Elena's wedding reception at the country club she and Marcus had insisted on, I'd had what I thought was a father-to-son-in-law conversation with her new husband. Nothing more than expressing my hopes that he'd take care of my daughter, that he'd love her the way she deserved. Apparently, Marcus had twisted my words into something sinister. "Elena, whatever Marcus told you, I think there's been a misunderstanding. All I did was save it." Her voice cut through my explanation like a blade. "Just get over here, now. And Dad?" She paused, and I could hear something shifting in her tone, something colder than anger. "Bring your apology. You're going to need it." The line went dead, leaving me standing in my cluttered garage, surrounded by the honest work of fixing broken things. Unlike my relationship with my daughter, transmissions and engines had logical problems with logical solutions. You diagnosed the issue, ordered the right parts, and put everything back together. Family relationships, I was learning, operated by completely different rules. I closed the shop early, something I hadn't done in 15 years, and drove through the winding roads that led to Hillcrest Estates, where Elena and Marcus had bought their dream home. The house represented everything I'd never been able to provide for my family: marble countertops, a 3-car garage, and a mortgage that probably exceeded my entire lifetime earnings. As I pulled into their circulant driveway, I noticed Marcus's BMW was missing, leaving only Elena's white Lexus gleaming in the afternoon sun. The front door opened before I could knock. Elena stood there in designer jeans and a silk blouse that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. At 25, she'd inherited her mother's striking features: dark hair that fell in perfect waves, green eyes that could freeze or melt depending on her mood, and the kind of effortless elegance that made her mother, Lucy, the most beautiful woman in our small town 30 years ago. "Come in." She stepped aside, her movements sharp and controlled. "We need to discuss your sabotage." The word sabotage hung in the air as I followed her into the living room. Everything was white and pristine, the kind of showcase home that appeared in magazines but felt more like a museum than a place where people actually lived. Family photos lined the mantel, but I noticed they were all recent pictures of Elena and Marcus at various social events. No childhood memories, no pictures of her growing up in our modest house across town. "Elena, I need you to tell me exactly what Marcus said I did, because I'm completely lost here." She remained standing while I sat in an uncomfortable white leather chair that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her arms crossed defensively as she began recounting a version of events that bore no resemblance to reality. He told me about your conversation at the wedding, how you pulled him aside and warned him that I was high maintenance and expensive to keep happy, how you said I'd probably leave him once I got bored, just like my mother left you, how you told him he'd better have a good lawyer because the women in our family always take everything in divorces. The words felt like physical blows. I sat in stunned silence, trying to process how my simple expression of paternal concern had been twisted into such poisonous lies. During the wedding reception, I'd approached Marcus near the bar, both of us watching Elena dance with her bridesmaids, radiant in her happiness. "Take care of her," I'd said. "She's been through a lot, losing her mother so young. She puts up walls sometimes, but underneath all that toughness, she's got the biggest heart in the world. Just be patient with her." Marcus had nodded, shook my hand, and assured me he understood. We'd talked for maybe 5 minutes about how proud I was of Elena's accomplishments, how grateful I felt that she'd found someone who appreciated her intelligence and ambition. I'd even thanked him for making her so happy. How that conversation had morphed into the character assassination Elena was describing remained a complete mystery. "Elena, that's not what happened, not even close. Marcus has completely misrepresented our conversation. Are you calling my husband a liar?" Her voice rose dangerously, and I recognized the warning signs I'd learned to navigate during her teenage years. Elena had always been passionate, quick to anger, but usually quick to forgive. This felt different, though. This felt calculated, as if she'd already decided I was guilty and was simply going through the motions of a trial. "I'm saying there's been a serious misunderstanding. What I actually told Marcus was, I don't want to hear your version of events." She began pacing across the pristine white carpet, her designer heels clicking with each sharp step. "I want to know why you couldn't just be happy for me. Why you had to inject your bitterness and cynicism into the best thing that ever happened to me." The accusation struck deep because it contained a grain of truth I'd never admitted to myself. I had harbored concerns about Marcus from the beginning, not because he was successful or wealthy, but because something about his charm felt calculated, performative. During the year-long engagement, I'd watched him interact with Elena like she was a prize he'd won rather than a woman he'd fallen in love with. But I'd kept those observations to myself, believing they reflected my own insecurities rather than genuine intuition. "Elena, I've only ever wanted your happiness. If I gave Marcus the wrong impression somehow, then I owe both of you an apology. But I need you to understand that I never, not once, tried to undermine your marriage." She stopped pacing and turned to face me directly, her green eyes blazing with the kind of fury I'd only seen once before, on the day her mother and I had told her we were getting divorced. "You know what the real problem is, Dad? You've never believed I deserved anything good. When I got the scholarship to Northwestern, you worried I'd get too big for my britches. When I landed the marketing job in Chicago, you warned me about forgetting where I came from. And when I met Marcus, someone who actually appreciates my ambitions, you couldn't stand it." Each accusation felt like a separate wound. I remembered those conversations differently, as expressions of parental love and concern rather than attempts to diminish her dreams. When she'd received the full scholarship to Northwestern, I'd been terrified of losing my little girl to a world I'd never understand. When she'd taken the job in Chicago, I'd worried about her safety in a big city, not her success. And when she'd introduced me to Marcus, my concerns had nothing to do with his wealth and everything to do with the way he seemed to view her as an acquisition rather than a partner. "Honey, I think you're misremembering some of those conversations. I've always been proud of your accomplishments. Maybe I worried too much, but that came from love, not doubt." "Love," she laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "You call it love when you spend my entire wedding reception filling my husband's head with warnings about what a terrible person I am? You call it love when you can't even pretend to be happy for me on the most important day of my life?" I tried to remember the wedding reception objectively, searching for moments when my behavior might have been misinterpreted. I'd given a toast, wishing them happiness and success. I'd danced with Elena during the father-daughter dance, telling her how proud I was of the woman she'd become. I'd shaken hands with Marcus's parents and made small talk about their business ventures. The only private conversation I'd had with Marcus was that brief exchange near the bar, where I'd expressed my hopes for their marriage. Elena, I need you to help me understand how we got here. 6 months ago, you hugged me at your wedding and told me you loved me. Now you're accusing me of sabotaging your marriage based on a conversation that Marcus has apparently mischaracterized completely. What changed? Her expression shifted slightly, and for a moment I saw something vulnerable beneath the anger. But it vanished quickly, replaced by renewed determination. What changed is that I finally see you clearly, the way you've always been jealous of anyone who might take me away from your small, limited world. The way you resented Mom for wanting more than what you could provide. The way you're resenting Marcus for giving me the life you never could. The comparison to her mother hit like a physical blow. Lucy and I had divorced when Elena was 16, after 18 years of marriage that had slowly crumbled under the weight of different dreams and incompatible visions of success. Lucy had wanted more than our small town could offer, more than my modest income could provide, more than the simple life I'd built around family and community. When she'd finally left for Atlanta with her new boyfriend, a pharmaceutical sales representative who drove a company Mercedes, Elena had blamed me entirely for the family's destruction. Elena, your mother and I had problems that had nothing to do with you or your choices. And whatever issues I had with Marcus, they weren't based on jealousy or resentment. They were based on what? She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. On the fact that he's everything you're not. Successful, ambitious, sophisticated. On the fact that he can give me things you never could. The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. Part of me wanted to defend myself, to explain that my concerns about Marcus had nothing to do with his financial success and everything to do with subtle signs of manipulation I'd noticed during their courtship. The way he'd gradually isolated Elena from her old friends, convincing her they weren't sophisticated enough for her new life. The way he'd made casual comments about my quaint little garage that seemed designed to embarrass her about her background. The way he'd insisted on the expensive wedding at the country club, then made pointed remarks about how I'd probably struggle to afford my portion of the costs. But explaining those observations would require Elena to hear criticism of the man she loved, and her current state of mind made that impossible. Instead, I tried a different approach. Elena, whatever Marcus told you about our conversation, and whatever feelings you have about my limitations as a father, I want you to know something. I love you more than my own life. I've made mistakes, probably more than I realize, but everything I've ever done was motivated by wanting the best for you. If my words or actions have damaged your marriage, then I take full responsibility, and I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. For a moment, her expression softened, and I glimpsed the little girl who used to fall asleep in my lap while I read her bedtime stories. But the vulnerability vanished as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by a hardness I'd never seen before. You want to make it right? Then stay away from us. Stop interfering in my life, stop offering your opinions about my choices, and stop pretending you understand what's best for me. I'm not your little girl anymore, Dad. I'm a grown woman with a husband who loves me enough to tell me the truth about what you really think of me. The finality in her voice made it clear that this wasn't a temporary argument, but a permanent severing. I stood slowly, feeling every one of my 47 years in my aching joints and tired bones. Looking around the pristine living room one more time, I realized I might never see this house again, might never have another conversation with my daughter in which she didn't view me as the enemy. Elena, I hope someday you'll remember that I love you, no matter what happens between us. And I hope Marcus proves worthy of the trust you're placing in him. I truly do. She walked me to the door in silence, her jaw set with determination. As I reached the threshold, she spoke one final time, her voice carrying the kind of controlled fury that cuts deeper than screaming. "I hate having you as a father. I hate that I share your DNA, your name, your pathetic view of the world. I hate that people will always know I came from you, instead of believing I made myself who I am. And most of all, I hate that you couldn't just love me enough to let me be happy." The door closed behind me with a soft click that felt louder than a slam. I stood on their front porch for several minutes, processing the conversation that had just destroyed the most important relationship in my life. The autumn air carried the scent of burning leaves and the distant sound of children playing in a nearby yard. Normal sounds of a normal day in a world that no longer felt familiar. Driving back to my garage, I replayed every moment of the wedding reception, searching for clues about when and how my relationship with Marcus had soured. We'd seemed to get along well during the engagement period, sharing occasional conversations about cars and sports. He'd even brought his BMW to my shop for routine maintenance, claiming he trusted my work more than the dealership service department. Looking back, I wondered if those visits had been reconnaissance missions, opportunities for him to gather ammunition about my working-class background and modest circumstances. The next 6 months passed in a blur of work and silence. Elena made no attempt to contact me, and I respected her wishes by maintaining the distance she demanded. I heard updates about their life through mutual acquaintances. Marcus had been promoted to regional sales director for his pharmaceutical company. They'd taken a vacation to Europe. Elena had been nominated for some kind of marketing excellence award. From the outside, their marriage appeared to be thriving, which made my concerns seem even more misguided and paranoid. I threw myself into work with renewed intensity, staying late at the garage to avoid going home to my empty apartment where everything reminded me of the daughter I'd lost. Regular customers noticed my mood and made gentle inquiries about Elena, forcing me to perfect a casual response about how well she was doing in her new life. Nobody needed to know that my relationship with my only child had been severed over a misunderstanding I still couldn't fully comprehend. The loneliness was crushing. Without Elena's occasional visits and phone calls, my social life consisted entirely of interactions with customers and the guys at Murphy's Tavern, where I'd started stopping for dinner most nights to avoid cooking for one. The bartender, Jimmy Murphy, had known me for 20 years and possessed enough emotional intelligence to recognize my sadness without demanding explanations. "You look like a man carrying too much weight, Thomas," he said one evening in late spring, sliding a beer across the worn wooden bar. "Want to talk about whatever's eating at you?" I shook my head, staring into the amber liquid while classic rock played softly from speakers that had seen better decades. "Some things can't be fixed with conversation, Jimmy. Some bridges, once burned, stay burned." That's a dark way to look at the world, Thomas. Most things can be repaired if both parties want it bad enough. His words carried wisdom earned through decades of listening to other people's problems, but I couldn't imagine Elena ever wanting to repair our relationship. Her anger had felt too deep, too final, too much like her mother's determination when she'd decided our marriage was beyond saving. Some people, when they made decisions to cut ties, possessed the strength to maintain those boundaries indefinitely. Summer arrived with the usual increase in business, as people prepared for vacation road trips and discovered automotive problems that had been lurking through the winter months. I hired a part-time assistant, Carlos, a young man Elena's age, who reminded me of my daughter in his combination of intelligence and ambition. He was working his way through community college with dreams of becoming a mechanical engineer, and his eagerness to learn provided a welcome distraction from my personal problems. "Mr. Thomas, you got a daughter who's an engineer?" Carlos asked one afternoon while we worked on replacing brake pads on a Honda Civic. "I seen some pictures in your office, and she looks real smart." "She's in marketing," I corrected, realizing I'd never updated Carlos about Elena's career or the fact that she no longer spoke to me. "And yes, she's very smart. Too smart for her own good sometimes." "My daughter's only 3, but I hope she gets smart like yours. I want her to have opportunities I never had, you know." Sometimes I think about moving to a bigger city where there's more chances for good jobs." His words carried echoes of conversations I'd had with Lucy 20 years earlier, when she'd started talking about leaving Millfield for better opportunities elsewhere. Back then, I'd argued that our small town offered everything a family needed: good schools, safe neighborhoods, strong community connections. I'd believed that success should be measured by happiness and contentment rather than income and status. Lucy had disagreed, and eventually her dreams of a bigger life had outweighed her commitment to our smaller one. "Carlos, you can build a good life anywhere if you're willing to work for it. Sometimes the grass looks greener in other places, but it usually requires just as much effort to maintain." "Yeah, but what if your kid wants more than what your hometown can offer? What if she's got bigger dreams than you can support where you are?" The question cut close to the bone. Had I been holding Elena back with my small-town mentality? Had my contentment with a modest life limited her vision of what was possible? Marcus certainly thought so, based on some comments he'd made during their engagement about how Elena deserved to be liberated from her humble beginnings. At the time, I dismissed his observations as snobbery, but maybe they contained uncomfortable truths about my limitations as a father. "I guess you support your kids' dreams wherever they lead," I admitted, surprising myself with the honesty, "even if it means they outgrow you." August brought news that arrived through Sally Henderson, the woman who cut my hair and served as Millfield's unofficial source of local gossip. She'd heard from her sister, who cleaned houses in Hillcrest Estates, that Elena and Marcus were having problems. Nothing specific, just observations about raised voices behind closed doors and Marcus's car being absent for several nights in a row. "I probably shouldn't be telling you this," Sally said while trimming the gray that was becoming more prominent around my temples, "but that girl needs her father, even if she's too proud to admit it." I nodded without responding, unsure whether I hoped the rumors were true or false. Part of me wanted Elena's marriage to succeed because her happiness mattered more than my wounded feelings. But another part, the part that had been harboring doubts about Marcus from the beginning, wondered if his true character was finally revealing itself. Either way, Elena had made it clear that my opinions and concerns were unwelcome, so I had no choice but to wait and watch from a distance. The call came at 3:15 on a Wednesday morning in early September. My phone's shrill ring jerked me from sleep, and I fumbled for the device in the darkness, my heart racing with the kind of fear that accompanies late-night calls. The display showed Elena's number, the first time I'd seen it in 8 months. "Dad?" Her voice was small, broken, nothing like the confident woman who had banished me from her life. "Dad, I need help. Marcus is gone, and I don't know what to do." I sat up immediately, reaching for the lamp beside my bed. "Elena, what happened? Are you hurt?" He laughed. The words came out in a sob that cut straight through my heart. He cleaned out our bank accounts and left me a note saying the marriage was a mistake.
"He took everything, Dad. Everything. And I have nowhere else to turn." The practical questions flooded my mind. Was she safe? Did she have money for immediate needs? Were there legal steps she needed to take to protect herself? But the most important question was emotional. After 8 months of silence and anger, was she truly ready to let me back into her life? "Where are you right now? Are you at home?" "I'm at the house, but I can't afford the mortgage without his income. The bank is already calling about missed payments. Dad, I think I'm going to lose everything." "Elena, listen to me. You're not going to lose everything, and you're not alone. I'm getting dressed right now and I'm coming over. We'll figure this out together, okay?" "But I said such terrible things to you. I accused you of things that weren't true. I told you I hated having you as a father." Her voice broke completely on the last sentence. Then I could hear 25 years of love and pain colliding in real time. This was my little girl, the child who used to run to me when she skinned her knees, the teenager who had cried in my arms when boys broke her heart, the young woman who had asked me to walk her down the aisle because she wanted me to be part of the most important day of her life. "Elena, you're my daughter. Nothing you could say or do would ever change that. I'll be there in 20 minutes, and we'll start putting the pieces back together. As I drove through the empty streets of Millfield toward Hillcrest Estates, I thought about the strange turns life takes, how the worst moments sometimes create opportunities for the best outcomes. Elena's marriage was ending, and she was facing financial ruin. But for the first time in 8 months, my daughter needed me. Not my money, not my connections, not my ability to provide her with a lifestyle I could never afford. She needed her father, the man who loved her unconditionally and would move mountains to protect her from harm. The house that had once symbolized everything I couldn't provide now felt like a tomb filled with expensive furniture and broken dreams. Elena met me at the door wearing sweatpants and an old Northwestern t-shirt, her designer clothes apparently abandoned along with the pretenses of her perfect life. Her eyes were red from crying, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she looked more like my daughter than she had in years. "I'm so sorry, Dad," she whispered as I pulled her into my arms. "I'm sorry for everything I said, everything I believed about you. Marcus told me you were trying to sabotage our marriage, but the truth is, you were trying to protect me from making the biggest mistake of my life." Holding my daughter in that moment, feeling her tears soak through my shirt while she trembled with exhaustion and heartbreak, I realized that some stories don't have clean endings or simple resolutions. Elena's marriage was over, her financial security destroyed, her trust shattered by the man she'd chosen over her father's concerns. But we were together again, and that was the only thing that mattered. "We'll get through this," I promised, stroking her hair the way I had when she was small and afraid of thunderstorms. "One step at a time, we'll get through this." The road ahead would be difficult. Elena would need to rebuild her life from scratch, learn to trust her own judgment again, and probably move back to Millfield while she figured out her next steps. But she wouldn't face those challenges alone, because she had something Marcus's money could never buy: a father who loved her enough to forgive everything and fight for her future, no matter how long it took or how hard the battle became. Standing in that doorway at 3 in the morning, holding my broken daughter while she sobbed against my chest, I couldn't help but remember the day she was born. 25 years earlier, I had been a different man in a different world, full of hope and certainty about the future I would build for my family. The journey from that moment to this one had been marked by choices, mistakes, and circumstances that seemed inevitable only in retrospect. Lucy Martinez had been the most beautiful woman at Millfield Community College when I first saw her in Professor Davidson's American History class in the fall of 1987. She sat 3 rows ahead of me, her long black hair catching the afternoon light that streamed through the classroom windows, taking notes with the kind of focused intensity that made other students seem frivolous by comparison. I was 22, working nights at Henderson's Auto Repair to pay for classes during the day, dreaming of eventually opening my own shop and building the kind of stable life my father had never managed to provide for our family. My approach to Lucy was hesitant and clumsy. After weeks of admiring her from a distance, I finally worked up the courage to ask if she needed help with the research paper Professor Davidson had assigned on the Industrial Revolution. She looked up from her textbook with dark brown eyes that seemed to assess my worthiness in a single glance. "You any good at research?" she asked, her voice carrying a slight accent that hinted at her Mexican grandmother's influence on the family's pronunciation. "I'm better with my hands than with books," I admitted, instantly regretting the honesty. "But I work hard, and I don't give up easily." Something in my answer must have appealed to her, because she smiled for the first time since I'd started paying attention to her. "Okay, Thomas Santos, let's see what you can do with the Gilded Age." That first study session in the college library lasted 4 hours and covered far more ground than American industrial history. Lucy told me about her family's struggles to maintain their small grocery store while her father battled cancer. She described her dreams of becoming a teacher, her plans to transform education in communities like ours, where too many kids dropped out to work instead of pursuing their potential. Her passion for making a difference inspired me in ways I'd never experienced before.
I shared my own modest ambitions about opening an automotive repair business that would serve working families with honest prices and reliable service. In Millfield, too many people got taken advantage of by mechanics who saw desperation as an opportunity for profit. I wanted to build something different, a business based on trust and community relationships rather than maximum profits. "You want to fix things," she observed after I'd explained my philosophy. "I want to fix things too, just different kinds of things." Our courtship developed slowly over the remaining months of that academic year. Lucy was serious about her studies in a way that made my own educational efforts seem half-hearted by comparison. She maintained a 4.0 grade point average while working weekends at her family's store, somehow finding time to tutor other students and volunteer at the local elementary school. I struggled to maintain a 3.0 while working nights and weekends, but her example pushed me to achieve more than I'd thought possible. By spring, we were spending most of our free time together. Study sessions evolved into long conversations about our families, our fears, our hopes for the future. Lucy's determination to lift herself above her circumstances through education fascinated me, while my practical approach to problem solving and steady work ethic earned her respect. We balanced each other in ways that felt natural and sustainable. "You ground me," she said one evening as we walked through the town park where teenagers from different social circles gathered to see and be seen. "All my big dreams about changing the world, and you help me remember that change happens one person at a time, one problem at a time." "And you inspire me to think bigger," I replied, meaning every word. "Before I met you, I just wanted a decent life."
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Now I want to build something that matters. The night I asked her to marry me, we were sitting on the hood of my 1978 Camaro at Miller's Point, the scenic overlook where half the couples in Millfield had gotten engaged over the past 20 years. Lucy had just received notification that she'd been accepted to the State University's education program with a partial scholarship that would allow her to pursue her teaching degree. "Lucy Martinez, you make me want to be a better man than I ever thought I could be," I said, pulling out the simple gold ring I'd bought with 3 months of savings from my auto repair job. "Will you marry me and help me build something beautiful together?" Her yes came without hesitation, followed by tears of joy and plans that tumbled out in an excited rush. We'd finish our community college degrees, then she'd transfer to complete her teaching certification while I established my automotive business. Marriage first, career second, family when we felt financially stable enough to provide the kind of childhood we'd both wished for ourselves. The wedding took place in Lucy's family's backyard on a warm Saturday in June 1989. Her mother had transformed their modest space into something magical with strings of lights, homemade decorations, and enough food to feed everyone in their neighborhood. My family drove down from Pittsburgh, my father managing to stay sober long enough to walk me down the makeshift aisle, my mother crying with happiness that I'd found someone who loved me despite our family's reputation for disappointment. Father Miguel from St. Anthony's performed the ceremony in both English and Spanish, honoring Lucy's heritage while including my family's Irish traditions. We exchanged vows we'd written ourselves, promises about supporting each other's dreams, building a home based on love and respect, creating the kind of family that would make our children proud to carry our name. Our first apartment was a tiny 2-bedroom place above Morrison's hardware store on Main Street. The rent was affordable, the location convenient, and the elderly landlord, Mrs. Morrison, treated us like the grandchildren she'd never had. Lucy painted the walls bright colors that transformed the cramped space into something cheerful and welcoming, while I built furniture from lumber scraps I acquired through my job at Henderson's. Those early married years felt like a perfect partnership. Lucy finished her community college degree with highest honors while working part-time at the elementary school as a teacher's aide. I completed my automotive technology certification and began saving money to open my own repair shop. Evenings belonged to us, cooking simple meals together, studying while sitting side by side at our kitchen table, planning the future we would build step by careful step. 5 years, Lucy said one night as we lay in bed listening to rain against our bedroom window. In 5 years, I'll have my teaching degree and you'll have your own business. We'll buy a house with a yard big enough for kids to play in. And a garage where I can work on cars in the evenings, I added, stroking her hair. Maybe teach our son how to rebuild engines. Our daughter, she corrected with a laugh. Our daughter is going to be too smart to waste time on engines. She's going to be a doctor or a lawyer or maybe a teacher like her mother. We'd had that conversation dozens of times, playfully arguing about whether our future children would inherit my practical nature or Lucy's intellectual ambitions. The answer, as it turned out, would be both, though not in ways we ever anticipated. Lucy's pregnancy was discovered during her final semester of community college. We'd been married for 2 years, still living in the apartment above Morrison's Hardware, still saving money for the house and business we'd planned to establish before starting a family. The timing wasn't ideal, but our joy was immediate and overwhelming. "We'll make it work," Lucy said as we sat in the doctor's office, still processing the news. "People have been raising children with less than what we have." I felt a mixture of excitement and terror. At 25, I was ready to be a father in emotional terms, but uncertain about the financial responsibilities that came with a baby. My job at Henderson's provided steady income, but not enough to support a family of 3 while also saving for future business investments. Lucy's part-time work would probably end when the baby arrived, reducing our household income by nearly half. "Maybe I should postpone the business plan," I suggested during one of our many late-night conversations about logistics and finances. "Focus on finding a better-paying job somewhere, maybe apply at the Ford dealership in the county seat." "No." Lucy's response was immediate and firm. "We're not abandoning our dreams because life is happening faster than we planned. We're going to adjust our timeline, not surrender our goals." Her determination proved infectious. Instead of scaling back our ambitions, we found ways to accelerate them. I took on additional weekend work, repairing cars for neighbors and friends out of the parking lot behind our apartment building. Lucy finished her degree while pregnant, then immediately enrolled in the state university's distance learning program that would allow her to earn her teaching certification through evening and weekend classes. Elena Lucy Santos was born on October 15, 1991, after 18 hours of labor that tested every ounce of strength Lucy possessed. I had never experienced love like what I felt holding my daughter for the first time, this tiny, perfect person who carried my DNA and Lucy's intelligence in her bright, curious eyes. She was beautiful in the way all babies are beautiful to their parents, but there was something special about Elena's alertness, the way she seemed to study the world around her with scientific fascination. "She's going to be extraordinary," Lucy whispered as we sat in the hospital room, taking turns holding our daughter while she slept. "Look at how she watches everything. She's already learning." The first year of Elena's life was the most challenging and rewarding period of our marriage. Lucy had planned to return to work part-time when the baby was 6 months old, but Elena proved to be a demanding infant who resisted every attempt at scheduling or routine. She slept in brief intervals, nursed constantly, and required the kind of constant attention that made Lucy's educational goals temporarily impossible. "I feel like I'm losing myself," Lucy confessed one evening when Elena was 8 months old and had been crying for 3 hours straight despite our best efforts to comfort her. "I love her more than life itself, but I can't remember the last time I had a conversation about something other than feeding schedules and diaper changes." I understood her frustration because I felt similar pressures from a different direction. Working full-time while helping with night feedings and weekend baby care left me exhausted in ways I'd never experienced. My dreams of opening an automotive business had been postponed indefinitely, as every spare dollar went toward baby expenses and the larger apartment we'd needed when Elena outgrew the tiny space above Morrison's Hardware. But there were moments of pure magic that made every sacrifice worthwhile. Elena's first smile, directed at me during a 2 a.m. feeding when she was 6 weeks old. Her first word, "Dada," spoken while I was changing her diaper on a Sunday morning when she was 10 months old. The way she would calm down when I held her against my chest and hum old country songs my father had sung to me during the rare moments when he was sober and present. By Elena's first birthday, we had found our rhythm as a family. Lucy had resumed her education part-time, taking evening classes while I watched Elena after work. I had been promoted to head mechanic at Henderson's, which came with a modest salary increase and the promise of profit sharing if the business continued to grow. Elena had developed into a toddler who was clearly gifted, speaking in complete sentences and demonstrating problem-solving abilities that amazed other parents. "She's going to need stimulation," Lucy observed as we watched 18-month-old Elena figure out how to stack blocks in patterns more complex than anything suggested in child development books. We enrolled Elena in a progressive preschool program that emphasized creativity and independent learning, stretching our budget but investing in our daughter's exceptional potential. Lucy found a teaching position at Millfield Elementary, finally able to pursue her career goals while contributing significantly to our household income. I began laying groundwork for my automotive business, researching locations and equipment costs while building a client base through word-of-mouth recommendations. The years when Elena was 2 through 5 represented the golden period of our family life. Lucy thrived as a teacher, earning recognition for innovative classroom techniques that helped struggling students discover their own capability. I opened Santos Automotive in a rented garage space, gradually building a reputation for honest work and fair prices.
Elena flourished in environments that challenged her intellectually while remaining the affectionate, curious child who brought joy to every day. "Look at what we built," Lucy said one evening as we sat on the front porch of the modest house we'd finally been able to buy when Elena was 4. Our daughter was playing in the yard with the neighborhood kids, her laughter mixing with theirs in the twilight air. "Remember when we thought it was impossible to have everything we wanted?" I did remember those early fears and doubts, the nights when we'd worried about money and timing and whether we were capable of raising a child while pursuing our own dreams. Somehow, through hard work and mutual support, we'd created exactly the life we'd envisioned during those long study sessions in the college library. Elena started kindergarten as the youngest student in her class, but academically prepared for much more advanced material. Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, called us in for a conference after just 2 weeks. "Elena is exceptionally bright," she explained, showing us samples of our daughter's work that demonstrated reading and math skills typically seen in 2nd or 3rd grade students. "We need to discuss acceleration options or enrichment programs that will keep her challenged and engaged." Lucy and I exchanged glances across Mrs. Patterson's desk, proud but also concerned about the social implications of our 5-year-old being academically out of step with her age peers. We'd both been smart kids who had sometimes felt isolated by our abilities, and we wanted Elena to have normal childhood experiences alongside intellectual stimulation. "What do you recommend?" Lucy asked, her teacher instincts engaging with the problem. "Let's try enrichment first," Mrs. Patterson suggested. "Keep her with her age group for social development, but provide advanced materials in areas where she's ready for more challenge. If that doesn't work, we can consider grade acceleration next year." The enrichment approach worked beautifully. Elena made friends easily despite her academic advantages, displaying the kind of emotional intelligence that helped her relate to children with different strengths and interests. She excelled in school while also learning practical skills from me, helping in the garage on weekends and showing genuine interest in how mechanical systems worked. "Daddy, why does the engine make that noise when Mrs. Henderson's car starts?" she asked one Saturday morning when she was 7, listening to the distinctive sound of a failing starter motor. "What do you think?" I replied, having learned that Elena processed information better when encouraged to form her own hypotheses first. "Something is worn out and needs to be replaced?" "Exactly right. Want to help me show Mrs. Henderson what we found?" Those moments of shared discovery and problem-solving created bonds between Elena and me that I treasured more than any business success or financial achievement. She was my daughter, my student, my companion in the kind of work that required both intelligence and practical skill. Lucy watched these interactions with obvious pleasure, often commenting that Elena was getting the best of both worlds, academic challenge from school and life skills from home. Our division of parental responsibilities felt natural and effective, with Lucy handling educational planning and social development while I focused on practical skills and problem-solving approaches. But as Elena grew older and her abilities became more pronounced, Lucy began expressing concerns about our small town's capacity to nurture our daughter's exceptional potential. "She's going to outgrow what Millfield can offer," Lucy said one evening when Elena was 9, bringing home yet another academic award from school.
The high school here is adequate for average students, but Elena is going to need advanced placement courses, competitive extracurricular activities, college preparation programs. She's still a kid, I replied, though I recognized the validity of Lucy's concerns. Let's worry about high school when she gets to high school. Thomas, we need to start planning now. The decisions we make in the next few years will determine what opportunities are available to her later. This conversation marked the beginning of philosophical differences that would eventually undermine our marriage. Lucy had always been ambitious, but her focus had been on her own career and our family's financial stability. Now, her ambitions centered on Elena's future in ways that required resources and connections we didn't possess in Millfield. She began researching private schools in larger cities, summer programs for gifted students, educational opportunities that would prepare Elena for admission to elite universities. Each option came with costs that stretched far beyond our current financial capabilities, requiring either significant debt or major changes to our lifestyle and location. What if we moved to Atlanta? Lucy suggested one night when Elena was 10. The school systems there have programs specifically designed for gifted students. I could probably find a teaching position that pays better than what I'm making here. And I could do what exactly? I asked, feeling the first stirrings of the insecurity that would plague our marriage for the next few years. Start over in a city where I don't know anyone? Compete with mechanics who have established customer bases? You're skilled enough to work anywhere. Maybe you could get a job at a dealership while you build a new client base. The suggestion felt like a fundamental misunderstanding of what I'd spent 10 years building in Millfield. Santos Automotive wasn't just a business, it was a community institution based on relationships and trust that had taken years to establish. Starting over in Atlanta would mean abandoning everything I'd worked for to chase opportunities that might or might not materialize. Lucy, we have a good life here. Elena is thriving, our business is successful, we're part of a community that knows and supports us. Why would we give that up for unknowns? Because Elena deserves more than we can give her in a town of 15,000 people. Because she's special, Thomas, and special people need special opportunities. These discussions continued for months, becoming more heated as Lucy researched additional options that required increasingly dramatic changes to our established life. She found summer programs at prestigious universities that would expose Elena to advanced mathematics and science courses. She identified private schools that offered Latin, multiple foreign languages, and college-level advanced placement courses. Each opportunity seemed designed to highlight the limitations of what our small town could provide. Elena, meanwhile, continued to excel in her current environment while remaining blissfully unaware of the growing tension between her parents. She was a happy, well-adjusted 10-year-old who loved school, enjoyed helping in the garage, and maintained friendships with kids from various social backgrounds. What does Elena want? I asked during one particularly difficult conversation about educational options. Have we actually asked her whether she feels limited by her current situation? She's 10 years old, Lucy replied with some frustration. She doesn't know what she doesn't know. It's our job as parents to ensure she has access to the best possible preparation for her future. It's also our job to make sure she has a stable, loving home and a sense of community belonging. Those things matter too. Of course they matter, but they're not enough anymore.
Elena is operating at a level that requires specialized attention. The word anymore hung in the air between us, carrying implications that our small-town life had become insufficient for our daughter's needs. Lucy wasn't just suggesting improvements to Elena's education, she was declaring that everything we'd built together was now inadequate for the family we'd become. Elena's 11th birthday party took place in our backyard, with 20 kids from her class and neighborhood. I watched her interact with friends of various academic abilities and social backgrounds, displaying the kind of inclusive leadership that suggested strong character development. She helped younger kids with party games, made sure shy children felt included, and demonstrated none of the arrogance or impatience that sometimes developed in gifted children who felt superior to their peers. "She's amazing," commented Sarah Mitchell, the mother of one of Elena's best friends. "Elena always makes Katie feel smart and important, even though Katie struggles with reading." Lucy overheard the comment and smiled proudly, but I could see her mind working on the implications. If Elena was already providing leadership and support to her current peer group, what would happen when she was placed in environments with equally gifted children? Would she lose the empathy and inclusiveness that made her such a special person? These questions became central to our ongoing discussions about Elena's educational future. Lucy argued that challenging Elena academically was essential for her intellectual development, while I worried about the social and emotional costs of removing her from familiar environments and relationships. "What if we compromise?" I suggested one evening in late fall. "What if we arrange for Elena to take advanced courses online or through correspondence programs while keeping her in local schools for social development?" Distance learning isn't the same as being in classrooms with other gifted students. She needs peer interaction with kids who can challenge her intellectually. She also needs to understand that intelligence is just one of many valuable human qualities. If we only expose her to other gifted children, how will she learn to work with and appreciate people who have different strengths? Our philosophical differences about education reflected deeper disagreements about values and priorities that had been dormant during Elena's early childhood. Lucy valued achievement, advancement, and the pursuit of excellence through competitive environments. I valued community, stability, and the development of character through diverse relationships and experiences. Neither approach was wrong, but they were becoming increasingly incompatible as Elena grew older and her exceptional abilities became more pronounced. Lucy saw our small town as a limitation that needed to be overcome. I saw it as a foundation that provided security and belonging while Elena developed the confidence to handle future challenges. The resolution, when it finally came, was initiated by Elena herself in a way that surprised both of us. "Mom, Dad, I need to tell you something," she announced one evening in December when she was 11, approaching us with the serious expression she wore when addressing important topics. "I know you've been arguing about schools and moving and stuff." Lucy and I exchanged guilty glances, realizing our daughter had been more aware of our discussions than we'd intended. "Honey, we're just trying to figure out what's best for your future," Lucy explained gently. "I know, and I appreciate that you want good things for me, but I need you to understand something important." Elena paused, organizing her thoughts with the deliberation that characterized her approach to complex problems. "I don't want to leave Millfield right now. I like my school, I like my friends, and I like helping Daddy in the garage. If I need different classes someday, maybe we can figure that out without changing everything else." Her words carried wisdom that humbled both Lucy and me. Elena had been listening to our debates and had reached her own conclusions about what mattered most for her happiness and development. She wanted to remain in familiar surroundings while gradually expanding her opportunities, rather than making dramatic changes that would disrupt her entire social and emotional foundation. "What if the high school here isn't challenging enough?" Lucy asked, still concerned about long-term academic preparation. "Then we'll figure something out when I get to high school. Maybe I can take some classes online, or maybe I can do dual enrollment at the community college. But I don't want to leave home just because I'm smart." Elena's maturity and self-awareness impressed me more than any academic achievement could have. She understood her own needs and priorities in ways that demonstrated emotional intelligence beyond her years. More importantly, she was advocating for choices based on overall well-being rather than single-minded pursuit of academic advancement. Lucy agreed to Elena's request, though I could sense her ongoing concerns about missed opportunities and delayed preparation. We developed a plan that would allow Elena to remain in local schools while supplementing her education through advanced online courses and summer enrichment programs that didn't require permanent relocation. For the next 2 years, this compromise worked reasonably well. Elena continued to excel academically while maintaining her friendships and community connections. She took algebra and geometry through online programs, participated in regional science fairs, and spent summers at gifted student programs that exposed her to advanced concepts without requiring us to abandon our established life in Millfield. But Lucy's restlessness grew more pronounced as Elena approached high school age. She began questioning not just our educational choices, but the entire lifestyle we'd built together. "Thomas, I feel like I'm wasting my life in this town," she confessed one night when Elena was 13. "I'm a good teacher, but I could be a great teacher in a school system that valued innovation and excellence. Elena is brilliant, but she's going to be held back by the limitations of rural education. And you're so talented that you could be running a major automotive operation instead of fixing farmers' trucks. The criticism stung because it contained elements of truth I'd been trying to ignore. I was capable of more than what my current situation demanded, but I'd chosen security and community connection over ambitious growth. Lucy was indeed a gifted educator who might have greater impact in more challenging environments. And Elena was clearly destined for achievements that would probably take her far from Millfield eventually. Maybe you're right about the opportunities, I admitted. But what about the costs? We have something good here, something stable and meaningful. Is it worth giving that up for possibilities that might not work out? How will we know unless we try? Thomas, I feel like I'm dying a little bit every day, watching my dreams get smaller and smaller. Her words revealed depths of unhappiness I hadn't fully recognized. While I'd been content with our modest success and community integration, Lucy had been feeling increasingly trapped by the very stability I treasured. The life that made me feel secure made her feel constrained. Elena, now 13 and highly perceptive about family dynamics, began spending more time at friends' houses and in extracurricular activities that kept her away from the growing tension at home. She never complained about our arguments, but I noticed she'd developed a habit of putting on headphones when Lucy and I discussed future plans, creating her own protective barrier against adult conflicts she couldn't resolve. The end, when it finally came, was precipitated by an opportunity that Lucy couldn't resist. The Atlanta public school system offered her a position developing curriculum for their gifted and talented programs, with a salary nearly double what she earned in Millfield and benefits that included tuition assistance for Elena at a prestigious private academy. "This is it, Thomas," she announced after returning from the interview trip in March of Elena's 8th grade year. "This is the chance we've been waiting for. I can make a real difference in education policy, Elena can attend one of the best schools in the Southeast, and you can explore automotive opportunities in a major metropolitan market. And if I don't want to explore those opportunities, if I want to keep what I've built here?"
Lucy's expression grew sad but determined. Then I guess we want different things for our futures. The divorce proceedings took 6 months and were conducted with the kind of civilized courtesy that masked profound disappointment on both sides. Lucy would move to Atlanta with Elena, who would start 9th grade at Westminster Academy in the fall. I would remain in Millfield with visitation rights every other weekend and half of summer vacations. Elena took the news with the stoic acceptance of a teenager who had been expecting this outcome for months. She hugged me tightly the night Lucy told her about the divorce plans. "I'm sorry, Daddy," she whispered. "I know this is happening because of arguments about my school and stuff." "Elena, this is not your fault," I replied firmly. "Your mother and I love you more than anything in the world. We just discovered we want different kinds of lives, and sometimes adults have to make difficult choices about priorities." "Will I still be able to visit you and help in a garage?" "Every chance we get, and you can call me anytime you want to talk about cars or school or anything else." She nodded against my chest, and I felt her tears soaking through my shirt. At 14, she was old enough to understand that divorce would fundamentally change our family structure, but young enough to believe that love could overcome logistical challenges. The day they left for Atlanta was the hardest day of my life up to that point. Elena cried as she said goodbye to her friends, promising to stay in touch and visit during school breaks. Lucy maintained her composure until the final moment, when she broke down and apologized for not being able to find a way to make our different dreams compatible. "I love you, Thomas," she said, as we stood in the driveway beside her packed car. "I always will. I just can't be the person you need me to be in this place." "I know," I replied, meaning it. "And I can't be the person you need me to be in Atlanta. Take care of our girl." Elena's first year at Westminster Academy was academically successful but socially challenging. She called every weekend with updates about advanced classes that finally matched her intellectual abilities, but also stories about feeling like an outsider among classmates who had attended private schools their entire lives. Her small-town background and my working-class profession made her different in ways that sometimes felt isolating. The kids here are nice enough, she explained during one of our Saturday phone calls, but they talk about things I don't understand. Vacations in Europe, parents who are doctors and lawyers, colleges their families have attended for generations. Sometimes I feel like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not. You never have to pretend to be anyone other than Elena Santos, I assured her. Your intelligence and character are what matter, not your family's social status. I know, Daddy, it's just hard sometimes. Our every other weekend visits became precious opportunities to reconnect and maintain the close relationship we'd always shared. Elena would arrive in Millfield excited to see old friends and spend time in the garage, helping with repairs while telling me about her classes and teachers. She seemed more relaxed and genuinely herself during these visits, free from the social pressures of her new environment. Lucy, meanwhile, thrived in her new position and began dating a pharmaceutical sales representative named David Martinez, who drove a company car and wore expensive suits. Elena mentioned him occasionally, but without much enthusiasm, describing him as nice enough, but clearly not someone she'd chosen to have in their lives. Mom seems happy, Elena reported during one visit when she was 15, but I think she misses you sometimes. She gets sad when she looks at old pictures of us together. Your mother deserves happiness, I replied, meaning it despite the lingering pain of our failed marriage. David seems like a good man who appreciates her intelligence and ambition. Yeah, but he doesn't understand her the way you did. When Mom talks about her teaching ideas, David just nods and changes the subject. You used to ask questions and help her think through problems. Elena's observations revealed a maturity and emotional perception that impressed me. At 15, she was capable of analyzing adult relationships with nuance and empathy, recognizing both her mother's happiness and the subtle ways in which her new relationship differed from our marriage. The summer before Elena's junior year, Lucy called with news that would fundamentally alter our family dynamics once again. Thomas, I need to tell you something important, she said during our regular check-in conversation. David and I are getting married in August. The announcement wasn't entirely surprising, given that they'd been dating for over a year, but it still felt like another ending, a final closing of doors that had remained symbolically open since our divorce. Congratulations, I managed, genuinely hoping Lucy had found the partnership and happiness she'd been seeking. Elena must be excited about having a stepfather. Actually, she's been pretty quiet about the whole thing. I think she's still processing what this means for our family structure. Elena confirmed her ambivalence during her next visit to Millfield. She was happy for her mother's happiness, but worried about how David's presence would change their household dynamics and her relationship with Lucy. He's not mean or anything, she explained, as we worked together replacing brake pads on Mrs. Morrison's ancient Buick, but he has opinions about everything, including how I should be preparing for college applications. He keeps suggesting schools that would look good for his business connections. What kind of suggestions? Business programs, marketing degrees, schools where his pharmaceutical company recruits. He talks about my future like it should be designed to advance his career somehow. Elena's concerns proved prescient. Over the following months, David increasingly involved himself in educational planning, pushing for Elena to consider colleges and majors that aligned with his vision of professional success. His suggestions were practical and potentially lucrative, but they reflected little understanding of Elena's actual interests and abilities. I want to study engineering or maybe computer science, Elena told me during one weekend visit, but David keeps talking about business administration and marketing. He says technical fields are too narrow for someone with my leadership potential. What does your mother think? She agrees with whatever David suggests. It's like she's forgotten that I'm good at math and science because I actually enjoy problem solving, not because I want to manage people or sell products. The dynamic Elena described worried me more than her academic challenges or social adjustments. David seemed to view my daughter as raw material for his own ambitions, rather than as an individual with her own interests and goals. Lucy's deference to his opinions suggested she was prioritizing marital harmony over Elena's autonomous development. The summer before Elena's junior year, Lucy called with news that would fundamentally alter our family dynamics once again. Thomas, I need to tell you something important, she said during our regular check-in conversation. David and I are getting married in August. The announcement wasn't entirely surprising, given that they'd been dating for over a year, but it still felt like another ending, a final closing of doors that had remained symbolically open since our divorce. "Congratulations," I managed, genuinely hoping Lucy had found the partnership and happiness she'd been seeking. "Elena must be excited about having a stepfather." "Actually, she's been pretty quiet about the whole thing. I think she's still processing what this means for our family structure." Elena confirmed her ambivalence during her next visit to Millfield. She was happy for her mother's happiness, but worried about how David's presence would change their household dynamics and her relationship with Lucy. "He's not mean or anything," she explained as we worked together replacing brake pads on Mrs. Morrison's ancient Buick. "But he has opinions about everything, including how I should be preparing for college applications. He keeps suggesting schools that would look good for his business connections." "What kind of suggestions?" "Business programs, marketing degrees, schools where his pharmaceutical company recruits. He talks about my future like it should be designed to advance his career somehow." Elena's concerns proved prescient. Over the following months, David increasingly involved himself in educational planning, pushing for Elena to consider colleges and majors that aligned with his vision of professional success. His suggestions were practical and potentially lucrative, but they reflected little understanding of Elena's actual interests and abilities. "I want to study engineering or maybe computer science," Elena told me during one weekend visit. "But David keeps talking about business administration and marketing. He says technical fields are too narrow for someone with my leadership potential." "What does your mother think?" "She agrees with whatever David suggests. It's like she's forgotten that I'm good at math and science because I actually enjoy problem solving, not because I want to manage people or sell products." The dynamic Elena described worried me more than her academic challenges or social adjustments. David seemed to view my daughter as raw material for his own ambitions, rather than as an individual with her own interests and goals. Lucy's deference to his opinions suggested she was prioritizing marital harmony over Elena's autonomous development.
These concerns came to a head during Elena's senior year when David began pushing for her to apply to his alma mater, a private college known more for business networking than academic excellence. The school would have provided good connections for a marketing career, but offered limited opportunities in the STEM fields that genuinely interested Elena. "Dad, I need your help," Elena said during a phone call in November of her senior year. "Mom and David want me to apply early decision to Davidson College because David went there and knows people who could help with admissions. But I want to apply to Georgia Tech and maybe some other engineering programs. What happens if you apply to the schools you prefer instead of Davidson? David says I'm being ungrateful and short-sighted. He says he's offering me opportunities most kids would kill for. Mom backs him up because she doesn't want conflict in their marriage." Elena's situation represented exactly the kind of outside interference I'd feared when Lucy remarried. David was using his position as stepfather to redirect Elena's future toward his own preferences and connections, while Lucy was allowing marital concerns to override her daughter's best interests. "Elena, you're 18 years old and smart enough to make your own educational decisions. Apply to the schools that match your interests and abilities. I'll support whatever choices you make." "But what if this causes problems between Mom and David? What if she chooses him over me?" The question revealed Elena's deepest fear about her mother's remarriage, that Lucy's commitment to her new husband might supersede her loyalty to her daughter. Unfortunately, Elena's concerns proved justified when Lucy called me the following week. "Thomas, I need Elena to cooperate with David's college recommendations. He's invested a lot of time and energy in planning her future, and her resistance is causing tension in our marriage. Lucy, Elena should choose colleges based on her own interests, not David's networking preferences. She wants to study engineering, and she's certainly capable of succeeding in technical fields. David thinks business administration would provide better long-term opportunities. He has connections that could help Elena throughout her career, at the cost of her pursuing subjects she's passionate about. Lucy, remember when you fought for your own dreams against other people's practical suggestions?" The conversation ended without resolution, but I could sense Lucy's internal conflict between supporting Elena's autonomy and maintaining harmony with David.
Over the following months, this tension created increasing strain in Elena's relationship with her mother, culminating in several arguments about college applications and career planning. Elena ultimately applied to Georgia Tech, MIT, and several other engineering programs without telling Lucy or David. When her acceptance letters arrived in March, including admission to Georgia Tech with a partial scholarship, David was furious about what he saw as deception and ingratitude. "He accused me of being manipulative and disrespectful," Elena reported during our next phone call. "He said I was throwing away opportunities The conversation with Elena lasted until dawn. We sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd eaten lonely dinners for the past 8 months, sharing coffee and 25 years of accumulated hurt, misunderstanding, and love that had somehow survived the worst circumstances either of us could have imagined. "I need to tell you what really happened with Marcus," Elena said as the first light of morning filtered through my apartment windows. "The things he told me about you, the way he twisted everything to make you seem like the enemy. I was so desperate to believe I'd found my perfect life that I ignored every red flag." She described the gradual isolation Marcus had orchestrated, convincing her that her old friends from Millfield were beneath her new social status, that my working-class background was embarrassing in their upscale circles, that success required cutting ties with anything that reminded her of modest beginnings. He'd presented these manipulations as protection, claiming he was helping her evolve beyond the limitations of her upbringing. "He made me ashamed of you, Dad. Ashamed of growing up above Morrison's hardware, ashamed of your garage, ashamed of the fact that you worked with your hands instead of managing other people. He convinced me that love meant choosing between my past and my future." The manipulation had been sophisticated and methodical. Marcus had praised Elena's intelligence and ambition while subtly undermining her confidence in her own judgment. He'd created financial dependence by encouraging her to quit her marketing job and focus on supporting his career advancement, then used that dependence to control her social connections and family relationships. "I didn't realize how isolated I'd become until he left and I had nobody to call except you," Elena admitted, tears streaming down her face. "All the friends I'd abandoned for him, all the bridges I'd burned to prove my loyalty to our marriage. The only person who still loved me unconditionally was the father I'd rejected for being everything Marcus told me was wrong with my life." The financial destruction had been equally calculated. Marcus had convinced Elena to put both their names on all accounts and major purchases, then systematically drained their resources while planning his exit strategy. The house, the cars, the investment accounts, everything was either heavily mortgaged or emptied by the time he disappeared with his pharmaceutical company's regional sales manager, a woman he'd been seeing for months while performing the role of devoted husband. "He left me a note," Elena said, pulling a crumpled piece of paper from her purse. "Want to hear what 2 years of marriage meant to him?" The note was brief and devastating. "Elena, I found someone who shares my vision for success without the baggage of small-town sentimentality. The house is underwater financially, and the credit cards are maxed out. Consider this an expensive education in choosing partners who match your actual worth rather than your romantic ideals. Best of luck with your future endeavors." Reading those words, I felt a rage unlike anything I'd experienced since Elena was a small child and other kids had made fun of her advanced vocabulary. Marcus had deliberately destroyed my daughter's life as a final act of cruelty, ensuring she'd face not just abandonment but financial ruin that would take years to resolve. "Elena, this isn't your fault. This man spent 2 years planning how to hurt you as deeply as possible. Nothing you did or didn't do could have prevented this. But I chose him over you. I believed his lies about what you said at our wedding. I screamed at you that I hated having you as a father, and I meant it when I said it." The memory of those words still hurt, but sitting across from my broken daughter, I realized they had been spoken by someone under Marcus's influence, someone who had been systematically turned against her own family through psychological manipulation. "Elena, you were being controlled by someone who understood exactly how to exploit your love and ambition. The daughter who said those things wasn't really you. She was the person Marcus needed you to become so he could justify his behavior.
We spent the next several hours working through the practical immediate needs. Elena had enough money left for about 2 weeks of expenses before facing complete destitution. The house would go into foreclosure within 30 days unless she could somehow arrange mortgage payments that exceeded her entire savings. Her credit was destroyed by debt Marcus had accumulated in both their names, and her job prospects were limited by the 2-year gap in her employment history. "I'll have to declare bankruptcy," she said with the flat tone of someone who had already accepted the worst possible outcome. "Lose everything, start over with nothing, and somehow rebuild a life from complete disaster. Or you could come home," I suggested quietly. "Stay here while you figure out the next steps. Get back on your feet without the pressure of impossible financial obligations." Elena looked around my modest apartment, taking in the simple furniture and evidence of the solitary life I'd been living since she'd cut off contact. The space was clean but sparse, designed for one person who worked long hours and came home to microwave dinners and evening television. "Dad, I can't impose on you like that."
You've built a life here, and I've already caused you so much pain. Elena, you're my daughter. This apartment, this life, everything I have exists to support you when you need it. That's what fathers do. The logistics took several weeks to arrange. Elena returned to Hillcrest Estates long enough to pack personal belongings and meet with lawyers about bankruptcy proceedings. I accompanied her, wanting to provide moral support during what would inevitably be a difficult process of dismantling the life she'd thought was permanent. The house looked different when I saw it again, less pristine and more desperate. Marcus had clearly taken anything of significant value, leaving behind expensive furniture that was either financed or impossible to transport. Elena moved through the rooms like a ghost, collecting photo albums and personal items while avoiding the bedroom where she'd shared 2 years of marriage with someone who had never truly loved her. "I keep thinking I should have seen this coming," she said as we loaded boxes into my pickup truck. "There were signs, moments when his mask slipped and I glimpsed something calculating underneath. But I wanted so badly to believe I'd found my fairy tale that I explained away everything that didn't fit the story." Elena, intelligent people get fooled by manipulators all the time. Marcus was skilled at presenting himself as whatever you needed him to be. That's not a reflection of your judgment, it's evidence of his deception. The move back to Millfield represented more than a change of address. For Elena, it meant acknowledging that her pursuit of upward mobility had led to complete disaster, that the sophisticated life she'd chosen over her father's humble circumstances had been built on lies and exploitation. The irony wasn't lost on either of us that the working-class background she'd been taught to reject was now her only source of stability and support. Elena's first weeks in my apartment were difficult for both of us. She slept on the couch because the space hadn't been designed for 2 adults, and our daily routines required constant adjustment. More challenging were the emotional dynamics of a 27-year-old woman who had been independent for nearly a decade, suddenly depending on her father for basic necessities. "I feel like such a failure," she confessed one evening as we shared a dinner of grocery store rotisserie chicken and canned vegetables. 27 years old, living with my dad, no job, no money, no prospects. This isn't how I thought my life would turn out. Elena, you're not a failure. You're a survivor of someone else's cruelty, and you're brave enough to start over. That takes more strength than most people will ever need to demonstrate. But I threw away so much time, so many opportunities. While I was playing house with Marcus, I could have been building a real career, maintaining real friendships, creating something meaningful with my life." Her self-recrimination was understandable but misguided. Elena had been 25 when she married Marcus, young enough to believe that love and good intentions could overcome any obstacle. Her choices had been influenced by social pressures and family expectations that made marriage seem like the ultimate achievement for an intelligent woman. "Elena, you're 27 years old with a college degree and experience in marketing. You have decades ahead of you to build whatever kind of life you want. This setback is devastating, but it's not permanent unless you decide it is. Finding employment in Millfield proved challenging for someone with Elena's qualifications and salary expectations. The local job market consisted primarily of retail positions, administrative roles with modest pay, and service industry work that wouldn't cover basic living expenses. Elena's marketing experience was relevant to few local businesses, and her employment gap raised questions from potential employers. "Maybe I should look at opportunities in larger cities," she suggested after 3 weeks of unsuccessful local job searching. "Atlanta, Charlotte, somewhere with companies that need marketing professionals." "That's certainly an option," I agreed. "But starting over in a new city while dealing with bankruptcy and emotional recovery might be overwhelming. What if you built some financial stability here first, then explored bigger opportunities when you're feeling stronger?" Elena ultimately accepted a position with Millfield Regional Bank as a loan officer, work that utilized her business education while providing steady income and health insurance. The salary was less than half what she'd been earning before marriage, but it offered the kind of predictable foundation she needed during her recovery period. Her first day at the bank coincided with my decision to offer her more permanent living arrangements. Carlos, my assistant at the garage, had been looking for an apartment to share with his girlfriend, and his departure created an opportunity for Elena to move into the small office space above Santos Automotive. "It's not much," I admitted as we climbed the narrow stairs to the area that had served as storage and paperwork space, "but it has a bathroom, enough room for a bed and basic furniture, and you'd have privacy while staying close enough for support." Elena looked around the space with eyes that had learned to see potential rather than limitations. The room was larger than many city apartments, with good natural light from windows overlooking Main Street. With some cleaning and basic renovations, it could become a comfortable living space that would allow her to maintain independence while remaining connected to family support. "Dad, this could actually work. I could help with the business bookkeeping to offset rent costs, maybe even develop some marketing strategies to attract new customers." Her enthusiasm about contributing to the garage's operations surprised me. Elena had always been interested in mechanical work as a child, but I'd assumed her business education and corporate experience would make automotive repair seem beneath her current capabilities. Instead, she approached the garage as a problem-solving challenge that engaged both her technical curiosity and her marketing skills. "What if we created a website with online appointment scheduling?" she suggested during her second week of living above the shop. "Most of your competitors don't have professional web presence, and younger customers expect to be able to book services digitally." Elena's marketing insights proved immediately valuable. She developed advertising strategies that highlighted Santos Automotive's honest pricing and community focus, distinguishing us from dealership service departments and chain repair shops. Her college education and corporate experience, combined with her understanding of small-town values, created promotional approaches that resonated with both long-time customers and newer residents. "You're good at this," I observed, after her first month of helping with business development had resulted in a noticeable increase in new customer inquiries. "Maybe you found your calling in small business marketing." "I forgot how much I enjoy problem-solving that has real-world applications," she replied. "Corporate marketing was all about manipulating consumer psychology to increase sales volumes. This feels more like helping people understand why they should trust us with their cars." Elena's integration into Millfield's social environment progressed gradually, but steadily. Former classmates who had remained in town welcomed her back without judgment, understanding that everyone faces setbacks that require family support. Her banking position connected her with community members from various backgrounds, rebuilding the local social networks she'd abandoned during her marriage. "It's strange," she commented one evening as we sat on the small porch outside the garage watching the sunset paint Main Street in golden light. "I spent so much energy trying to escape this place, convinced that staying here meant accepting limitations. But coming back has made me realize that community connection might be more valuable than career advancement." "Different things matter at different stages of life," I replied. "When you were 22, ambition and achievement felt like the most important goals. Now that you've experienced isolation and betrayal, relationships and stability probably seem more precious." Elena's healing process wasn't linear or simple. Some days brought confidence and optimism about her future prospects. Other days brought crushing depression about the time she'd lost and the trust she'd need to rebuild in her own judgment. The trauma of Marcus's abandonment and financial sabotage created anxiety about making major decisions or believing in other people's good intentions. "What if I'm broken now?" she asked, during one particularly difficult evening when bankruptcy paperwork had triggered memories of discovering Marcus's deception. "What if I can't trust myself to recognize genuine love when it comes along?" "Elena, you recognized my love even after convincing yourself to hate me. Your ability to trust isn't broken, it's just more careful now. That's probably healthy after what you've been through." Professional counseling helped Elena process the psychological damage from her marriage and develop strategies for moving forward without carrying Marcus's influence into future relationships. The therapist, Dr. Rebecca Walsh, specialized in helping people recover from emotionally abusive relationships and understood the specific challenges Elena faced. "Rebuilding after psychological manipulation takes time and patience," Dr. Walsh explained during one of the family sessions Elena had requested. Elena's recovery involves not just healing from betrayal, but also rediscovering her authentic self underneath the person Marcus tried to create. These therapy sessions also helped repair damage in our father-daughter relationship. Elena needed to understand how Marcus had exploited her love for me as a weapon against both of us, while I needed to forgive the hurtful things she'd said while under his influence. The process required examining our communication patterns and developing better strategies for maintaining connection despite different perspectives and life choices. "I want you to know that I never stopped loving you," Elena said during one particularly emotional session. "Even when I said I hated having you as a father, somewhere underneath all that anger and manipulation, I knew you were the one person who would never abandon me. And I want you to know that your success and happiness matter more to me than whether you choose to stay in Millfield or move somewhere else," I replied. "I'll support whatever decisions you make about your future as long as they're truly your decisions and not someone else's agenda." Elena's romantic life remained on hold for over a year as she focused on career development and emotional healing. She dated occasionally but avoided serious relationships, explaining that she needed to become comfortable with being alone before risking partnership with another person. This deliberate approach to romance impressed me as evidence of the wisdom she'd gained through surviving Marcus's betrayal. "I used to think being single meant failure, that I needed a relationship to prove my worth as a woman," she reflected during one of our evening conversations. "Now I understand that choosing to be alone until I find genuine partnership is actually self-respect." When Elena finally did meet someone who interested her seriously, it was through circumstances that demonstrated how much her priorities had changed. Jake Morrison was Mrs. Morrison's grandson, home from military service and working as a paramedic while completing nursing school through online programs. He was intelligent but unpretentious, ambitious but rooted in community values, successful without needing to flaunt his achievements. "He asked me out while I was helping Mrs. Morrison set up online banking," Elena reported with genuine excitement after their first date. "We talked for 2 hours about everything except our jobs or financial status. He wanted to know about my favorite books, my opinions on local politics, whether I thought the town should approve that new restaurant downtown." Jake's approach to courtship was refreshingly straightforward after Elena's experience with Marcus's calculated charm. He called when he said he would, included her in activities with his friends and family, and demonstrated interest in her thoughts and opinions rather than trying to reshape her personality to match his preferences. "He asked about you within the first week," Elena told me with amusement, "wanted to know if you were the Thomas Santos who'd rebuilt his grandfather's Chevy engine 15 years ago. When I said yes, he got this huge smile and said his family had been talking about that restoration job ever since." Jake's respect for my work and his genuine interest in Elena's family background represented a complete contrast to Marcus's subtle attempts to distance her from her roots. Instead of being embarrassed by Elena's working-class father, Jake seemed to view our family connection as evidence of Elena's character and values. Their relationship developed slowly and naturally over several months of shared activities and deepening friendship. Elena brought Jake to family dinners, included him in garage conversations, and gradually integrated him into the life she'd rebuilt in Millfield. His presence felt comfortable and sustainable rather than exciting and dramatic. I think I love him, Elena confessed one evening as we worked together on an engine rebuild that had become our regular bonding activity. But it's different from what I felt for Marcus. Calmer, more realistic, based on who he actually is rather than who I wanted him to be. That sounds like mature love, I replied, pleased to see my daughter developing emotional wisdom through experience rather than learning it through additional disasters. Elena and Jake's engagement was announced during the town's annual 4th of July festival at the same community celebration where Lucy and I had announced our engagement 34 years earlier. The parallel wasn't lost on either Elena or me, though we both hoped her marriage would have a different outcome than mine had with her mother. "I want you to walk me down the aisle again," Elena said when she called to share the engagement news. "But this time, I want it to mean what it's supposed to mean. A father trusting another man to love and protect his daughter, not just a ceremony I'm performing because it's expected." The wedding planning process gave Elena opportunities to demonstrate how much her values had changed since her first marriage. Instead of an expensive country club reception, she chose the community center where local families celebrated graduations and anniversaries. Instead of designer gowns and elaborate decorations, she selected simple elegance that honored the occasion without creating financial stress. "I want our wedding to be about bringing families together, not impressing people with how much money we can spend," she explained while addressing invitations in my apartment kitchen. "Jake and I are building a life, not staging a performance." Elena's approach to her second marriage reflected lessons learned through the disaster of her first. She maintained her own bank account and career independence while planning a genuine partnership based on shared values and complementary strengths. Jake supported her ambitions without trying to control them, while Elena respected his goals without abandoning her own identity. The wedding ceremony took place on a crisp October morning at the same church where Lucy and I had married, with Father Miguel's successor performing a service that emphasized commitment and community support. Elena wore her grandmother's pearl necklace and carried flowers from Mrs. Morrison's garden, connecting her new beginning to family history and local traditions. Walking Elena down the aisle for the second time felt completely different from the first experience. Instead of anxiety about her choice of partner, I felt confidence that she was marrying someone who truly knew and appreciated her. Instead of worry about the future, I felt gratitude that we'd survived the worst possible circumstances and emerged stronger as a family. "Who gives this woman to be married to this man?" Father Rodriguez asked, using the traditional language that had taken on new meaning after everything we'd experienced. "Her family does, with love and blessing," I replied, meaning every word in ways I hadn't fully understood during Elena's first wedding. Elena and Jake's married life unfolded with the kind of steady happiness that makes for boring stories but satisfying reality. They bought a modest house 3 blocks from the garage, close enough for Sunday dinners and emergency car repairs, but far enough to maintain appropriate boundaries. Elena continued working at the bank while developing freelance marketing services for small businesses. Jake completed his nursing degree and accepted a position at the regional hospital's emergency department. "We're not going to be rich or famous," Elena said during one of our weekly family dinners, her hand resting on Jake as they shared news about their mortgage approval and career developments. "But we're going to build something real and sustainable together." Their contentment with ordinary happiness represented a complete transformation from Elena's earlier pursuit of extraordinary success and social status. Marriage to Jake meant partnership rather than performance, community integration rather than social climbing, love based on shared values rather than mutual ambition. The phone call that changed everything came on a Tuesday morning in March, 2 years after Elena's second wedding. I was working on a transmission repair when my cell phone rang with Elena's number, which wasn't unusual since we talked several times each week. "Dad, I need to tell you something important," she said, and I could hear tears in her voice that made my heart race with worry.
Elena, what's wrong? Are you hurt? Is Jake okay? We're fine. We're more than fine. Dad, I'm pregnant. The joy in her voice was unmistakable despite the tears, and I realized she was crying from happiness rather than distress. After everything she'd survived, all the setbacks and recoveries and gradual rebuilding, Elena was finally able to share news that represented pure celebration. "Elena, that's wonderful. When are you due?" "November."
And Dad, Jake and I have been talking about names. If it's a boy, we want to name him Thomas, after his grandfather. Standing in my garage, surrounded by the honest work that had sustained me through divorce and estrangement and reconciliation, I felt emotions I couldn't organize into words. My daughter had survived betrayal and financial ruin, rebuilt her life with patience and wisdom, found genuine love with someone who appreciated her authentic self, and now she was offering me the gift of a grandchild who would carry my name into the future. Elena, that's wonderful. When are you due? November. And Dad, Jake and I have been talking about names. If it's a boy, we want to name him Thomas, after his grandfather. Standing in my garage, surrounded by the honest work that had sustained me through divorce and estrangement and reconciliation, I felt emotions I couldn't organize into words. My daughter had survived betrayal and financial ruin, rebuilt her life with patience and wisdom, found genuine love with someone who appreciated her authentic self, and now she was offering me the gift of a grandchild who would carry my name into the future. Elena, I'm honored. Your mother would be so proud of the woman you've become. I hope so. I hope I can be the kind of mother she was before everything got complicated. Strong and loving and wise enough to let my children make their own choices. Elena's pregnancy progressed smoothly, with Jake providing the kind of attentive support that came naturally rather than feeling obligated. They attended childbirth classes together, prepared the nursery with secondhand furniture and handmade decorations, and approached parenthood as another adventure to share rather than a burden to endure. Thomas Jacob Morrison was born on November 23rd, after 8 hours of labor that Elena handled with characteristic determination and courage. I held my grandson for the first time in the hospital room where Elena and Jake glowed with exhaustion and joy, and I understood that this moment represented the completion of a circle that had begun with Elena's birth 30 years earlier. "He's perfect," I whispered, studying the tiny face that combined Elena's intelligence with Jake's calm temperament. "Absolutely perfect." "Just like his grandfather," Elena replied, reaching out to touch my hand as I cradled her son. "Dad, I want you to know that I couldn't have survived any of this without you. The divorce from Marcus, the financial disaster, rebuilding my life, learning to trust again. You saved me by never giving up, even when I told you I hated being your daughter." Looking at my grandson, thinking about the journey that had brought our family to this moment of perfect happiness, I realized that Elena's cruel words during her first marriage had been the worst and best thing that ever happened to us. Worst because they had caused genuine pain and separation during the time we most needed each other's support. Best because surviving that crisis had taught us both what truly mattered and created unshakable bonds based on unconditional love rather than conditional approval. Elena, you never need to apologize again for anything that happened during your marriage to Marcus. You were being manipulated by someone who understood exactly how to turn you against the people who loved you. What matters is that we found our way back to each other. I just want Tommy to grow up knowing that family love doesn't have conditions or expiration dates, that no matter what mistakes he makes or how lost he gets, he'll always have a safe place to come home to. The promise Elena was making to her unborn son reflected lessons learned through nearly losing the most important relationship in her life. She understood now that love requires forgiveness, that families survive through commitment rather than convenience, that the bonds between parents and children can endure almost anything if both parties refuse to give up completely. "He'll know," I assured her, meaning it completely. "He'll grow up in a family that's been tested and proven strong enough to survive anything." Elena's journey from the angry young woman who screamed that she hated having me as a father to the grateful mother planning her son's future had taken nearly 3 years and required more courage than most people demonstrate in entire lifetimes. She'd survived financial ruin, emotional betrayal, social humiliation, and the complete destruction of everything she'd thought she wanted. But she'd also discovered that some things, family love, community support, personal integrity, couldn't be destroyed by external circumstances. Watching Elena and Jake prepare for parenthood while building their modest but meaningful life together, I felt profound gratitude for the strange paths that had brought us to this moment. Elena's marriage to Marcus had been the worst mistake of her life, but it had also taught her to value the right things and choose partners based on character rather than status. Her financial disaster had been devastating, but it had also brought her home to discover that belonging mattered more than achievement. "Dad, do you think Mom would be proud of how everything turned out?" Elena asked as we sat together in the hospital room, Jake sleeping in the chair beside her and baby Tommy nursing contentedly. "Elena, your mother would be amazed by your strength and wisdom. She always knew you were special, but I don't think even she could have imagined how beautifully you'd handle the worst challenges life could offer." The truth was that Lucy would indeed be proud of Elena's choices in recovery, but she might also be surprised by how completely Elena had embraced the small-town values we'd both taken for granted during our marriage. Elena's journey had ultimately led her back to the community-centered life that Lucy had found too limiting, though Elena's return was based on wisdom rather than resignation. As I prepared to leave the hospital and let the new family rest, Elena stopped me with one final observation that demonstrated how much she'd changed since her days of pursuing status and sophistication. "Dad, I finally understand what you tried to tell me about building a life versus performing one. Marcus and I were always performing success for other people's approval. Jake and I are just living our actual lives together, and it's so much better than anything I used to think I wanted." Driving home through the familiar streets of Millfield, past the houses where generations of families had raised children and built modest but meaningful lives, I reflected on the lessons Elena's journey had taught both of us. Love doesn't prevent people from making terrible mistakes, but it does provide a foundation for recovery when those mistakes create disasters. Family bonds can survive almost any strain if both parties remember that forgiveness is stronger than pride. And sometimes, the worst things that happen to us create opportunities for the best outcomes we never imagined possible. Elena had screamed that she hated having me as a father, and for 8 months I'd believed our relationship was permanently destroyed. But when her husband abandoned her and she faced complete ruin, she'd called me at 3 in the morning because she knew I would answer. That phone call had begun the healing that brought us closer than we'd ever been before, creating the kind of unshakable bond that comes only through surviving real tests together. Now, Elena is building the kind of family Lucy and I had tried to create 30 years earlier, but with wisdom earned through experience rather than hope based on youthful optimism. Her son would grow up knowing that love requires commitment, that success means building something meaningful rather than accumulating impressive achievements, and that the most important relationships are the ones that survive when everything else falls apart. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.